Hello there, my name is Gary Sims and this is Gary Explains. Now I'm preparing a series of videos about different aspects of Wi-Fi. So I'm talking about, kind of Wi-Fi 6 and mesh networks and kind of Wi-Fi extenders, the kind of real life throughput you get through all those things and so on. And I was actually going to make the first video today about a Wi-Fi extender. Here is a simple Wi-Fi extender, and I was going to talk about how they actually work, what they achieve, where you need to put it and so on. But in making that video I discovered I was explaining lots of terminology, and I thought to myself, it's probably not best to explain the terminology in this video. It'd be better if I had a separate video which I could refer back to in all my Wi-Fi videos about the terminology. 5 gigahertz, QAM, 64 QAM, and error encoding, and channels, and 802.11ax, all these things that kind of we talk about, and maybe we're not sure exactly about what all of them mean. So this video is about looking at all the different terminology of Wi-Fi, trying to understand what it all means, so that we have a good grounding for when we want to start talking about mesh networks and Wi-Fi 6 and all that other great stuff that I've got coming down the pipeline. So if you want to find out more, please let me explain. Okay, so let's get cracking. What does Wi-Fi stand for? Wi-Fi is the brand name and trademark of the Wi-Fi Alliance, a consortium of companies that oversee the various Wi-Fi standards. The Y part stands for wireless, good, and the Fi part stands for fidelity, hi-fi, Wi-Fi. Well, actually, it turns out the Wi-Fi doesn't actually stand for anything, but with the original brand name when it was launched, there was the tagline, the standard for wireless fidelity. So what is Wi-Fi? Wi-Fi is the wireless version of Ethernet. And Ethernet, of course, is what we use where we've got, switches and hubs and routers and LAN cables, and we plug them all in, connecting all our PCs together. Ethernet is defined in 802.3, and Wi-Fi is defined by 802.11, or a whole series of standards, which is why you read about 802.11a or 802.11.n and so on. And we'll speak more about those in a minute. Ethernet is often referred to as a LAN, local area network. That means it's in your building, in your house, and therefore Wi-Fi is often referred to as a WLAN, a wireless local area network. And then, just for the completeness of your education, once network packets leave your office building, your home, whatever, then they go out onto a WAN, a wide area network, not a local area network. In other words, they go out onto the internet. So we talked about 802.11, and look at all the different standards here. 802.11.b, 1999, 2.4 gigahertz maximum theoretical speed up to 22 megabits a second. 802.11.a, that was 1999 as well, 5 gigahertz greater speed, 54 megabits a second. Then we had G, N, AC, a second wave of AC. Then we had AX, and we've also now got AX Wi-Fi 6E. Now, obviously, those namings are they just trip off the tongue, as you're down the shops, oh, I've got an 802.11.ac router. So recently they've been rebranded Wi-Fi 6, and then retrospectively Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 3, Wi-Fi 2, Wi-Fi 1, and Wi-Fi 6E is the same as Wi-Fi 6, but it's into the 6 gigahertz frequency range, which in the moment the USA has opened up. Not necessarily been opened up in other parts of the world yet. So the rest of the world, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, quoting loads of figures there down the right hand side, 600 megabits a second, 1300 megabits a second. Now, all those speeds are theoretical, and we'll talk more about that later, and they do depend on a whole bunch of things like the number of streams and the modulation and the channels and all this kind of stuff, and we'll talk more about that later. And you may disagree with some of those numbers, and that's fine, because they're all just theoretical anyway. They don't really make any real world reality. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay, now the first thing you have to understand about Wi-Fi and why it really is a bit of a mess is that we're talking about 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz, and those three frequencies can't talk to each other. which is obvious from a law of physics. You know, a device is transmitting at 2.4 gigahertz. It can't be picked up on a device that's listening at 5 gigahertz. So you've got these 2.4 gigahertz only standards, 802.11b and 802.11g, Wi-Fi 1 and Wi-Fi 3. Then you've got these 5 gigahertz only ones, that's 802.11.a and 11ac, Wi-Fi 2 and Wi-Fi 5. Then you've got Wi-Fi 6E, which is in 6 gigahertz. It's another whole new frequency. And then you've got some standards that apply to both. So you've got 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz in 802.11.n and in AX, so Wi-Fi 4 and Wi-Fi 6. So first of all, you might get yourself a shiny new smartphone. You might yourself get a new laptop. And actually, it turns out that you've got a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, 802.11g router in your house, and your new device supports 5 gigahertz. Well, they're not going to talk to each other. So that you may read in some things about dual band. So dual band often refers to devices that can work on both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. So if you're into Wi-Fi 6 or you've got Wi-Fi 4, then you kind of are expecting it to work on both. Now, tri-band doesn't refer to 2.4, 5 and 6. At the moment, it refers to 2.4 and 2 regions of the 5 gigahertz range. And we'll talk more about this when I come in to do mesh networking, because you might get tri-band mesh networking. We'll talk more about then. But this is also going to get more complicated when we get 6 gigahertz support. Are we going to talk about, 4 band, or are they going to replace the word tri-band to include 6 and get rid of the 2? It's going to be complicated. So you really have to get your head around this, that there is different radio frequencies and they're not compatible. They can't talk to each other. And some of them are only tied to that frequency, and some of them work across different frequencies. So hopefully we can kind of sort out that mess. But really, 802.11n and AX are the way to go, because at least you're kind of getting support for both frequencies built into the devices. So let's do a pop quiz. I've taken these numbers actually from actual devices. So I've got one device here that says it supports 802.11bgn. Well, what does that mean? I'll give you the answers in a minute. You try and answer yourself. I've got another device that is 802.11ANC. So the letters are different except for the N is common. What does that mean? Now the iPhone 12, for example, supports Wi-Fi 6, 802.11ax. What does that mean? Does it support 802.11b? Does it do that? And I went back to Samsung's website, and the Galaxy S8 supports 802.11abgnac. Well, what does that mean? What's supported and what's not? Well, let's have a look at the answers. Hopefully you've got the answers now from my previous slide. So if it supports BGN, it means it's only 2.4 gigahertz. It supports 11B, 11G, and 11N, but without the 5 gigahertz parts of 11N. Okay, so it's only the 2.4 gig. Now, if you've got an 802.11ANC device, that means it's 5 gigahertz only. It supports 802.11a, 802.11n, but only the 5 gigahertz part, and 802.11ac. So there's no 2.4 gigahertz around. Now, the iPhone 12 supports Wi-Fi 6, 802.11ax. What does that mean? It means it supports everything. It's got 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. It covers A, B, G, N, AC, and AX. So that's great. So as I said earlier, if you are getting into Wi-Fi 6, at least you know you're going to kind of get everything in the box. And the Galaxy S8, of course, it's a few years old now, so it was doing pretty well for its time. 802.11abgnac. That means it supports 2.4 gigahertz B, G, and N. It also supports 5 gigahertz A, N, and AC. So notice that the N is common. And AC will be the fastest because it's the fastest version of what you get for 5 gigahertz. But basically, it will connect to just about anything else. At the time, of course, now since then we've had AX Wi-Fi 6 added. So how did you do in that quiz? I hope you did well. Do tell me in the comments below to tell me whether you're able to work all that out. So which is better, 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz? This is one of the questions you have to ask yourself as you're kind of thinking about Wi-Fi equipment and what you're buying. So 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi is better at covering larger areas, and that's because at that frequency the radio waves can go through solid objects more easily. So, if you build yourself a Superman lead-lined room, it's not going to go outside of that. But if you're talking about walls, if you're talking about partitions, then 2.4 gigahertz will do better. But 5 gigahertz is faster. So you can get more data into a 5 gigahertz signal, and so you're going to get greater speeds. But because it's 5 gigahertz, you're going to get a smaller coverage because it passes through solid objects are much, much harder. They bounce off rather than pass through or get dispersed. And so the advantage, of course, of dual band devices and dual band access points is that you can switch between the two frequencies. So if you've got an access point that's giving you 2.4 Wi-Fi network and a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi network, then you can connect to the different ones. If you walk further away from it, maybe you can switch to the 2.4 and still get connection, but you're going to drop your speed. Now, this is also important to note because I've been reading around on kind of, websites like Amazon or whatever, and reading people who've bought routers, and they've complained, oh, this AC router doesn't go nowhere near as far as my old 2.4 gigahertz router. It's rubbish, and they give it 2 stars. And it's because they don't realise that, of course, 5 gigahertz doesn't go as far as 2.4. That's the nature of physics. You can't change the laws of physics, he says in his very bad Scotty accent. So that's a point to remember. They are different, and they have got different kind of quality. So don't go around putting 2 stars on Amazon websites because you didn't understand that, of course, AC is nowhere going to go as far as an N or a B or a G signal. Now, the frequency bands, so we're talking about 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, are split into little slices, little groups of frequencies next to each other, and they're called channels. Now, 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi covers around about 100 megahertz, depends exactly on what country you're in, and those channels are 5 megahertz wide. So you go, great, 5 megahertz wide, that's really good. But the thing about 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi for B and G is that they transmit on 22 megahertz bandwidth, so therefore they overlap each other. So if you're in channel 1 and you've got another piece of Wi-Fi equipment in channel 3, then they're going to clash because that's only 15 megahertz between them. So really, you've actually only got 3 channels that can be used without overlapping, channels 1, 6 and 11. You might have 13 in some countries. So most access points, thankfully, will configure to that automatically, so that when they kind of have a look around, they'll see if there's another device broadcasting on channel 6 nearby, and it will switch to channel 11. But Wi-Fi 2.6 gigahertz is bad in that sense. There's only 3 channels, and so therefore you can get a lot of congestion. And more than that, you've also got Bluetooth appears in the same channel range. So here's that picture. You can see here's channel 1, here's channel 2, here's channel 3, and there are only 5. So really only 1 and then 6 kind of don't have this overlapping clash that the other ones do. So 1, 3, and 11. And also you can get Bluetooth snuck in here as well. Completely different protocol, completely different system, but it occupies the airwaves. So you might get, you'll get interference and things won't go as far as they should do. Microwave ovens also operate at 2.4 gigahertz as well. Baby monitors. So you can actually get a lot of stuff going on in this frequency range, and it can kind of clog up your 2.4 gigahertz, airwaves. Now, 5 gigahertz uses 25 channels that are spaced 20 megahertz apart. So there's 25 channels now to choose between, not just 3, and they are spaced properly apart. In fact, if you look at the diagram here, you can actually see that it's channel 36 and channel 40. Well, actually, that's 4 lots of, 5 megahertz. So they are still 5 megahertz apart, but we only use 36 and then 40, 44 and then 48. So in reality, they're 20 megahertz apart and there's no overlapping. So that gives us a lot more range when we're talking about any congestion we're getting in 5 gigahertz. The other people can have their devices nearby, and it's not going to be so crowded, and your router, your devices, we're able to pick a nice clean channel that's not going to get any other signals going on top. And of course, that means you'll get better throughput ultimately. Of course, that's the aim. Now, if you look at these channels here, we've got 4 of them, like I said, all spaced nicely apart. But if you look at this next row here, there's actually 40 megahertz channels. So what's actually happening here is that these 2 channels, 100 and 104, are being joined together. And in this one, 108 and 112 are being joined together. And of course, you're basically therefore using 2 channels, so you get double the throughput. So that's great. So 40 megahertz and even the possibility of 80 megahertz was added into later versions of Wi-Fi, particularly in the 5 gigahertz channel. And in fact, even 160 megahertz is a thing nowadays, taking up all these channels here. I did some testing on that. I'll tell you right that back in the very last slide, in fact. So you can actually join together, and every time you add in more channels, you increase the throughput, increase the speed, which is great. So a wider channel gives you the greater possibility of throughput, but a couple of things. It does reduce the number of overlapping channels. So we were started with 25, hooray, great. And then suddenly we've joined them all together as, 8 160 megahertz channels, or eight little channels joined together to be one, well, now you've only got 3. So you've gone back to the days of, you know, Wi-Fi at 2.4 gigahertz. So if you've got busy area, you've got neighbors, if you're in an apartment, in blocks, then you're going to get this problem that neighbors might be using the same channels, and therefore it's not going to work. And also an interesting thing, every time you increase the width of the channel, you do actually increase the noise. And when you've got greater noise, that means the signals can't get through, which means therefore you get errors, and so actually you reduce the throughput. So actually there's a bit of a balancing act going on between which is better, a wider channel or with a, you know, more noise, or if you've got good signals, then you're okay. But if it's bouncing around, if it's going through a wall, then maybe that's going to be noisier, and you can actually reduce your throughput. So the router and your device negotiate, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, to try to get the best throughput. Now, there's a really complicated subject which we'll just touch on, but you need to know it because you will see these terms. Now, radio waves, of course, they're analog, they're radio waves, and Wi-Fi, of course, is digital. Wi-Fi is not analog. So we need a way of converting digital information to transmit it over a radio and then convert it back into digital information. So modulation is basically digital to analog conversion, carrying it in a radio wave and then converting it back to digital again. Now, if you remember the old days of kind of modems, you know, when you dial up modems, or maybe you've watched an old movie, you know, and you've seen you know, Young Sheldon or whatever you've watched, and you can hear the old that's my impression of it. Thank you, everybody. Now, if you think about that, that's basically doing analog to digital conversion, digital analog conversion, by using audible frequency. So it's taking each tone and it's making it mean something. Now, modern day modulation is way more complex than that. You can multiply that complexity by 1 million or probably even more. Now, there are different ways of modulating the signal to carry that digital information. Phase shift keying, PSK, both in its binary method and other methods, are used by Wi-Fi, and also so is QAM. So let's just talk a little bit about QAM for a second. Now, we won't go too much into it, but it's a very sophisticated method of dividing up the signal into 4 different areas. We won't go into it much, but the lower the QAM, the higher the robustness, because you're trying to get less data into that signal, so you get lower throughput, but it might survive more the journey from, you know, the transmitter to the receiver. So 16 QAM on a 20 megahertz channel might give you 28.9 megabits per second as the theoretical maximum. And again, remember, we'll talk about theoretical maximums in a minute. Whereas 256 QAM, so the same signal, same 20 megahertz, but you're just modulating that signal differently, you can get up to 86.7 megabits per second. So you see the difference. So how you modulate that signal can do that digital to analog conversion. The way you fiddle with that radio wave can actually give you greater throughput. And in fact, 124 QAM on a 160 megahertz channel can reach over 1 gigabits per second, and that's when you get now into Wi-Fi 6. And I've even heard that in Wi-Fi 7 there's going to be 4096 QAM, 4K QAM. So you can imagine the kind of speeds they're trying to get into those. But it's also worth noting that inside this modulation system, they also have to include error correction, forward error correction, that can cope with corrupt bits. So as the packets come along, you check to see whether everything is as it should be. You've got extra bits to repair it. So a 1-2 forward error correction has a maximum speed of 28.9. But if you don't need the error correction, if the signal is good and clean without that noise, then you actually get away with a 3-4. 3-4 means that you put in 1 bit after every 3 bits rather than 1 bit after every bit, which is the 1-2. And then you can get a maximum speed of 43.3 because more of the bits are being used for actual data and not being used for error correction. That's still using 16 QAM. So clean signals at high QAMs, high channel widths, without too much error correction, is going to get you the best speeds. Now, obviously, high noise, interference, distance will cause the sender and receiver to switch to lower modulation methods and use more error correction bits. Now let's quickly touch on MIMO. How do you pronounce that? MIMO. Multiple in and multiple output. A stream is what actually carries the Wi-Fi data between your device and your router. Now, in Wi-Fi 4, we had the idea of multiple streams. So really 2 radios being used at the same time to split your data into 2 paths and send one of it down one channel and one of it down another channel. And the top theoretical speed of the router is determined by the speed of the stream multiplied by the number of streams. So very crudely, the number of antennas you had, the better it was, although nowadays that isn't actually such a good measure. And it's also worth noting that MIMO also applies to 4G and 5G, but it's not shared with the Wi-Fi MIMO. So don't think if it says 4G, 4 times 4 MIMO, that also applies to your Wi-Fi. There'll be different radio systems in whatever device it is that you're using. Now, the first N routers had one stream, let's say with a single band 2.4 gigahertz, so therefore it could achieve 150 megabits a second. Now, if you've got 4 streams in your router, then you can get 4 times 150 megabits a second. So now you suddenly got a 600 megabits a second throughput, so a huge change there. And when we get to Wi-Fi 5, that has a single stream speed of 433 megabits a second. So a single AC stream was actually the equivalent of 3 streams back in 802.11n. So that's quite a difference as well. And when you hear them talking about an AC 1900 router, well, that might mean it uses 3 5 gigahertz streams for a total of 1,300 megabits a second, 3 times 433, plus also 4 times 2.4 gigahertz in the N streams for another 600 megabits per second. So when you add those together, you get 1,900 megabits a second. But here's the point: your single device, your smartphone, your laptop can't use all of that. Okay, so this is where we're seeing it's for the overall throughput. If you've got 2 laptops, a laptop and a smartphone, and an Amazon Fire Stick or a Google Chromecast, and they're all talking over the network, they can all talk down these different things, and there are different radios, different antennas inside the Wi-Fi router, so it can handle them all coming in at the same time. And that's different to what you're going to get from just one device. So if you are shopping for a router, don't see the big number, 1900, 2400, whatever, AX 2400 now went to Wi-Fi. It says, oh, this is great, my new iPhone is going to go so fast. No, it won't. It's the overall throughput, because it's talking about if you've got things happening in the 2.4 gigahertz band and in the 5 gigahertz band at the same time. Now, there are some devices with special SDKs. You can use them to actually do this kind of thing, but your average normal device is not going to start putting things out across 2 lots of different frequency bands, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, and multiple streams. It's not going to happen. Okay, so just be aware of that. So a 4x4, 4 times 4 MIMO router supports 4 streams. That's 4x because 4x4 is because it's 4 for ascending and 4 for receiving. Now a smartphone, like let's say the latest iPhone or something, or a laptop, might be 2 times 2 MIMO. So to get the maximum speed, the app must start 2 parallel downloads to get 2 times. If it just does 1 download, it will be limited to 1 stream. The API, the Android, whatever, the SDK can't suddenly split your data into 2 streams. You can split the data into 2 streams. As an app developer, you can start off 2 streams and start downloading them, and you'll get that increased throughput. Or if you're using a system that sends requests over multiple streams, peer-to-peer kind of stuff, then that's going to work. But if you're just doing a download, 1 download, then it's going to be limited to that 1 stream. Okay, and I did a lot of testing on this, and this is going to be some of the future videos about showing the different performance you get 1 stream, 2 streams, and the fact you have to start multiple downloads to get that, to actually get that throughput. Okay, so we're almost coming towards the end. Well done for sticking through to here. Worth mentioning this thing here. You may hear about MCS, the modulation and coding schemes. Very important. When the client device and the access point chat together, they negotiate the speed of the connection. Okay, and they might, one might transmit something towards the other. If it doesn't get the response, it goes, oh, that didn't work very well. I'll change to a different coding scheme, to a different modulation, see if that works. And this is called the MCS. And there's a big table that you can see that it shows you all the different MCS variations, and it's big. I'll show you, in fact, show it to you here. Look at that. There you go. That's absolutely huge. And that just tells you all of the different things that can happen across all of the different types of encodings and the different Wi-Fi standards and the different, forward error correction. Oh, it's just massive. Let's have a look at a tinier one. This is for just a part of what you can get for Wi-Fi 5. So down the left here we have the MCS index, and notice it's 0 through to 9 and then 0 through to 9 again. In fact, the table goes on beyond this because this first one is about the number of streams. Here's one stream, and here's when you get to 2 streams. Okay, so you can see what happens, and here's the different QAMs that we were talking about. What QAM level are they connecting to? Okay, and then also across here, which width of the channel, 20 megahertz, 40 megahertz, 80 megahertz, 160 megahertz. And then you can see these are the theoretical different speeds that can be achieved if you connect at these different types of connections. Now, what I'm going to show you here is on the Mac, you can actually get that information. So look at this here. It's saying that it's connected to channel 36 over 5 gigahertz and with an 80 megahertz channel connection. Okay, so that's told me what the 2 devices have negotiated, and it says therefore it's a 1200 megabits a second. It's using Wi-Fi 6 802.11.ax, and the MCS index would be 11. So I can go and look that up in that big table and find all these parameters in there, and it's using 2 times 2 MIMO. That's what it's doing. So there you go. Now that information is not so easy to get hold of on other operating systems. The Mac gives it to you there quite easily, which is why I've shown you. Okay, couple of last slides. Now the physical layer defines how many 1s and 0s can be sent over the wireless link. Okay, and so that's when you talk about these theoretical speeds of, over 1 gigabit. But not all those 1s and 0s are actual data that you want to send. Some of them, as I've said, include that error correction code. So you can see, for example, that by changing the error correction, which are additional 1s and 0s that are sent, you're changing that data you can send. And then on top of that, you've got things like TCP/IP that in itself sends different, acknowledgements and so on back and forth. So there's extra data flowing back that's not your data. Okay, and then there are other protocol overheads. For example, if you were downloading something over HTTP, then there's going to be some stuff that goes on there. So noise, interference, error correction, TCP/IP overheads all means that the actual speeds that you get in real life are much lower than all those big numbers that they quote on the side of the box. So I want to warn you, because it's a disappointment when you say, oh look, 1900, this is going to be great. It's not. Okay, so you have to, and we'll talk more about this in other videos, you have to understand that the real world data rates are much lower. So here's an example using Wi-Fi 6 with a Huawei P40 connected to an Honor Router 3 using 2 times 2 MIMO, which was an MCS of 9. You can look that up in that table if you want to, just Google it, MCS table, which means it had a theoretical physical data connection speed of 1921 megabits a second. So that's 5 gigahertz, 160 megahertz channel with 256 QAM. What did I get? I got 902 megabits a second. So 1921 all the way down to 902. That's just 47% of the theoretical speed. Okay, so always take these physical theoretical numbers with a pinch of salt, and I covered more about this in later videos, Wi-Fi 6 mesh networks and so on. Okay, that's it. This is probably quite a long video already, so I won't keep you any longer. You know the drill, like and subscribe, etc, etc. See you in the next one.